Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to this show on the iHeartRadio app, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. We are speaking today to Lauren Ranalli. She is celebrating her book, Places We Have Never Been. Before we speak about places we've never been with Lauren, I want to tell you about a place that I just love to visit, the beautiful city of Chicago. I am returning to the beautiful city of Chicago February 8th and 9th to be part of Kids Expo. It's happening at the Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois. It's going to be a great time. We are creating a wonderful, totally interactive booth where families can experience what it's like to be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And we're going to use a lot of the content that we record on future episodes of the show. We're also going to be presenting Jedley's Totally Interactive Magic Circus. You may be selected to create one of my wonderful illusions right there on stage. It's all happening February 8th and 9th, Kids Expo, Schaumburg Convention Center, Schaumburg, Illinois. Joining us on the line right now from the beautiful state of Michigan. She is the author of Places We Have Never Been. Please welcome to the show, Lauren Ranalli. Lauren, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Jed. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on. I love the title of your new book, Places We Have Never Been. Can you give us a little thumbnail description of the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So Places We Have Never Been is kind of a journey in imagination for kids to explore new places and new cultures. So at the beginning of the story, you pick a place in your mind where you've never been, where you've never traveled. Could be a few blocks from you, could be, across a distant ocean. And then the book takes you through a series of questions about what it would be like to go there. How would you get there? How long would it take? What do you see when you arrive? How do they say friend in the place you've never been? How do they say hello? And so it really just gets kids thinking about places as exciting and travel as exciting and not just different. Mm-hmm. And what's nice about it, I think, for readers and for parents is that you can pick a new place in your mind every time. So it's really a different story every time you read it.
That really is great. I just love that. We're talking a little bit before we started recording about the fact that, I really love traveling. Mm-hmm. But I really love meeting people from different cultures, and we've really loved having kids, international students living in our home and becoming part of our family and truly becoming part of our family.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned, and it sounds kind of trivial, but I think it really is important. The idea of finding out how you say hello in different countries.
Yeah.
And it is different countries because, how you say, Spanish is spoken in, very, dozens and dozens of countries, but how you say hello in Spanish in different countries varies from country to country.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, I think giving, kids and families together the opportunity, when I read this book aloud to kids, even my own kids, sometimes the answer to the question we're being asked is, well, we don't know. We don't know how they say friend if we were traveling to Afghanistan. Let's look that up. We don't know how they would say hello if we're traveling to Brazil. And so I think that that's a nice opportunity to kind of, do a little investigating together.
Yeah, absolutely. Lauren, my wife and I traveled to Panama, a couple of summers ago. And, when we got into our Uber, going from the airport to the hotel, I just happened to ask the driver. I said, "Well, how do folks here in Panama greet each other?" And he said, "Well, hola, buenos dias." I go, "No. How do people who live here greet each other?" And he said, "Oh, we say que sopa." And I goes, and I thought he said que pasa. He goes, "No, que sopa." And from that week, and I don't look like a Panamanian any way, shape, or
Sure.
form. But I would go up, if they're checking into the hotel, I just walked up there with my big blue eyes and my goofy smile, and I said, "Que sopa," and made everybody behind the desk laugh, and
Yeah.
they were my buddies.
Well, and I think the fact that you did that, I mean, I think it shows a certain level of respect too, and just interest, genuine interest. Like, you are in a new place and you want to experience that, in as many authentic ways as you can.
Yeah. And that's such an important lesson, I think, to share with our kids, is just finding ways to demonstrate respect.
Yes.
And they can be so simple, just so, a smile, saying que sopa, just showing the interest, not being that typical, they used to say, ugly American who just expects everybody to be able to speak our language.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What was it that inspired you to create Places We Have Never Been?
So I think a couple of different things. One, I have, I try to have all of the books that I write and that I work on really have a focus on, just kind of expanding our view of culture or community, or like interpersonal dynamics and relationships. And I also have a public health background. So I spend a lot of time, thinking and working, in sort of dynamics and challenges around, culture and community. And honestly, this book, this is my second children's book. The concept just kind of came to me, sort of in one fell swoop, and I think a lot of it was just around the fact that, we want my own children, our kids, to really be observant and mindful and educated and excited about learning about new places. We don't have a ton of resources for travel. So, being able to learn about places without actually going there, I think, is also important. But I have to say too, there's been a lot of, conversation in, the public sector and in news and whatnot, just about, I think, fear of people being different and fear of others. And so having, something that feels positive around, how can you learn about other people and other places, just felt important to me.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is important to us too. And, traveling is great, but traveling is expensive.
Yeah.
And it's expensive in terms of money, it's expensive in terms of time.
Absolutely.
And, when the kids were little, we were able to travel a lot because they didn't have anything going on. But once they started school and dance and soccer and football and, there was a stretch of time, I think, when the kids were in middle school where it was very, very difficult for us to get away. And there were sometimes, some years we weren't able to go anywhere.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we're sort of in that stage of life now. I have 2 elementary age children, and their activities take up a lot of time, and their activities cost money, and so I think really, like I said, we're not in a position right now to say, let's pick up and go on an adventure together. We do try to take, more local family trips, or we try to just explore, areas near to us. We're, as you mentioned, I'm in Michigan. I'm in Ann Arbor, which is a very, multicultural and international town, because of the university. But there, we try to say, let's plan a Detroit day. Let's go down to Detroit and, let's go to some of the activities and museums and parks that are there and explore more of just our, more local communities as well.
And a lot of the things, like you mentioned, I haven't been to Ann Arbor, but there are a lot of cities and living in cities that, where there are different cultures and different neighborhoods, and like a lot of the communities, a lot of churches, a lot of, those kind of organizations will have cultural celebrations. Yes. And it's just because you're not part of that culture doesn't mean that you're not welcome.
Agreed.
You can go down and experience the culture by sharing them. And again, it's a great way to let the folks, your neighbors in your city who may, their families may have originated someplace else, show them that respect and that interest.
Absolutely. My first children's book is called The Great Latke CookOff, and it's a Hanukkah story. And I wrote it because my husband and I are an interfaith family. My family's Jewish and his is Catholic. And my oldest son, he has a December birthday. And so when he was born, we got a lot of very lovely Christmas books for him. And so I decided, I'll go out and get some Hanukkah books as well. And I really couldn't find anything that really resonated with me and my cultural experience with celebrating, Hanukkah and the holidays. I found a lot of either like Elmo celebrates Hanukkah or the history of Hanukkah and the Maccabees. There was very little about just a family celebrating the holidays together. And, we have a lot of traditions in our family around food. And so I wanted that to be an accessible story for Jewish and non-Jewish families. And I love how many people of different faiths, of different religions, different ethnicities, different backgrounds have read that book and said that it's inspired them, to try their own cooking competitions at their holiday time. And so that's just always been something that I think is really important and valuable is sort of, experiencing cultures outside of your own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting that you, with your son, you had this, but that wasn't a problem, but you had a desire to go out and find a Hanukkah book for your son to celebrate that. So you went to the bookstore intentionally. You had an intention when you went to the bookstore.
I did.
I love, getting books from family is great, and being in a bookstore and have a book catch your eye and bring that home, that's great too. But there's also a lot of value in being very intentional in creating the bookshelf and creating your family library. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my kids are now at an age where they ask a lot of questions about the books we read. And I think that children's books provide such a wonderful opportunity for, like we said, not just sort of exploring the world around you, but also, processing big emotions and sort of, working through things. So the idea of creating an intentional bookshelf is to be mindful of the books that you select and use them as opportunities to address topics you face as a family or broaden your family's exposure to different communities or cultures or experiences. So I've kind of teamed up with another local writer, and we've done some parent workshops on creating an intentional bookshelf. And we lead parents through an activity that parents or caregivers, will lead them through an activity that will help them think about their own goals around buying or borrowing or gifting books to others, as well as kind of identifying some possible gaps in their own bookshelf. So, for example, we'll look at some checklist categories for an intentional bookshelf that may explore culture or disability, emotions, gender, geography, language, religion and holidays, socioeconomic status, STEM or STEAM books, race and ethnicity, all of these different things, and just sort of have people kind of do like a mental checklist of where they have a lot of gaps. Mm-hmm. And then, we talk through that. We talk about strategies, and, obviously then provide some book recommendations of some of our favorites. But I think too, just, talking about how do you then use these books to spark some discussion.
Mm-hmm. And I love that a lot of families come up to me and say, "Oh, my child was bullied. What book should I read?" Or my kid has a disability. What book should I read? Or we're going through a divorce, and I want to talk to my kids about that. But all these different issues, they affect all of our kids,
right?
Whether your child is being bullied or not. Your child is experiencing bullying. They're seeing it happen. They're hearing about it. Whether your family is experiencing a divorce or not, your kids' classmates, someone in your kid's class is experiencing divorce. And so it's important to have these resources because we need to have those conversations with our kids, even if it's not affecting us directly.
Agreed. And I think, there's this, this concept out there that books can be or should be both windows and mirrors. So they should be windows into other experiences, and they should also be mirrors to your own. I mean, so you want to kind of have a balance because you want kids to see themselves in books. You want, if your child has a disability or a close friend with a disability, you want to be able to see that. You want to be able to see kids of different races or your own race in the books to sort of reflect what's possible or what's out there, or just sort of validate your own lived experience. But then, so you want there to be mirrors that represent your own life, but you also want to have books that are windows and provide an opportunity to see something else.
Absolutely. Such an important thing to remember. And I love that quote, books should be windows and mirrors. One of the things that we talk about here on the show is that parents, as a caregiver, you are your child's most important teacher. And a lot of people will say, no, well, what if the parent's not doing a good job? I say it doesn't matter. They're still the most important. They're doing a terrible job teaching, but that's still the most important lesson the kid's learning.
Yeah.
Teachers, school systems, they spend a lot of time developing a curriculum and, choosing books. I think it's real important for parents to do the same. And how would you go about, you have family, you were talking about, in your family, you celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, and then your son has a birthday in December, which could be good or bad because he might not get as many presents. But, so I'm sure you have family that give gifts. And how would you go about if, I have these books that I would love to add to my family library, but, books aren't free, and
right.
Do you ever recommend books to your families to give to your kids, or how would you go about doing that?
Oh, every year. I put together an Amazon wish list, every year for my family, and they appreciate it because, I think as with all, kind of grandparents or aunts and uncles, at some point you're like, I just need ideas. Like, just tell me what is going to be useful and what your kids are really going to like. And so I do, I think that it's really helpful for people to kind of set their own like buying and gifting goals, and also borrowing. Like, what are you going to borrow from the library? We go to the library constantly. And so, I'll kind of give my kids free reign at the library a little bit to pick out what they want, but I always add a couple myself. And I look for books that, even if they didn't pick them out, I'm like, let's read about Ramadan right now, or let's, we do a lot of the Who Was series. And so we'll do Who Was Rosa Parks and Who Was Jesse Owens and, who is Malala. And so I think that, the library is obviously such a great resource as well. But I think it's really also, important for people to recognize your purchasing power, because there is such a gap in the amount of diverse books or books written by diverse authors that's out there. And so if you are spending money on books, I think being mindful of that and being intentional about putting your money where your interest is, because that tells publishers that these are the types of books that people want to see. And so I have made an intentional decision that if I'm going to buy a new children's book, for my kids, or if I'm going to gift books to others, that I want them to be ones that support diverse authors, that broaden our exposure to other communities, that promote kindness, or fill some other gap on our shelf.
Yeah, it's so important. You're absolutely right. Publishers want to publish books that are being bought.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the same is true with libraries. We talk a lot about, if you want to support an author, especially an independent author, it's great to buy his or her book, but it's also great to go down to the library and ask them to carry those books.
Yes, ask them to carry those books. Put reviews on Amazon or on Goodreads. If you are, if you get to be a classroom reader in your kid's classroom, bring a diverse book, bring a self-published book from, an author of color to the kids' classroom. Think of ways that you can really. I have a blog post on my website about 10 ways to support self-published authors, and it's a lot of that. It's share people's work and get their name out there.
You brought up something, and I don't mean to kind of ambush you,
Sure.
But you brought up this idea of being a classroom reader. And I think that's great. I love that when I was a parent, go in and reading books. And my wife is a teacher, and she's had experiences not so much in her class, but at her school, where parents have come in and kind of blindsided the people because they brought in some books that are very controversial and not telling anybody beforehand, just because they think that everybody should know that. What do you think about that? Obviously, if there's a point of view that you hope that the kids in the classroom would be exposed to, well, you certainly have a right to have that desire, but how would you go about, bringing that to a class?
So I think maybe one strategy I would employ is, first, confirming with the teacher, what book you do want to bring, which I've actually never been asked to do. But I can, and this is tricky for me because also of my public health work and, my sort of commitment to, marginalized communities in the work that I do. I can appreciate that there is a difference for some parents in bringing a book, such as like one of the books I've brought in to read is called, Ruby's Worry. And, so it's about kind of experiencing big emotions, but it also, the main character just happens to be a young Black girl. So I like that. I like to bring that book. I think it's a great story for a number of reasons. One of the other books I really like and that I've done as part of like a community reading project, which this book was selected specifically for that, is a book called I Am Jazz, which is about, the kind of life experience of a young transgender girl. So I can appreciate that in a classroom setting, that if you brought in that book and kids starting asking questions, that you don't want to mess up that conversation. And so I don't think parents should necessarily, like as a guest reader, I don't know. I'm a little tripped up on that because part of me is like, well, I would bring it in. But I can appreciate, making sure that, the opportunity I think is really about getting kids to sort of really think more about, asking follow-up questions like, what do you think the characters in this book were feeling? What did the book make you think about? Have you ever had an experience like the one in the book? And those are the kinds of questions that we as parents should be asking, when we're snuggled up at night reading with our kids. But, you want to have a responsible relationship to that classroom and to be respectful. But I also would say, I wouldn't shy away personally from bringing in a book that exposes young people to other life experiences.
Yeah, and there, as you said, there's just respectful ways of doing it. Having a conversation with the teacher beforehand.
Yeah.
And if there's pushback, well, then you can deal with the pushback and, you advocate to bring that point of view into the classroom. It's just, I don't like to surprise anybody.
Yeah.
And I
for
know
sure.
as teachers, they have a hard enough time.
Yes.
Tell me some of the books that are that you would suggest families consider adding to their intentional bookshelf.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm going to send you, can I send you a list afterwards too?
Sure,
for you to share? Okay, great. All right. Well, let me see. Some of my favorite ones. There's, a book that we just bought recently, and I don't have the author's name in front of me, unfortunately, but it's called The Buddy Bench. And, my kids actually have a buddy bench at school, but this is about like empathy and inclusion. And it's really the story of, the concept of the buddy bench is that if you're out on the playground and you don't have anyone to play with, you can go sit on the bench and then somebody knows that you're open to playing with them. And so they can come up and ask you to play. And it's just a really lovely rhyming story with adorable illustrations. So I really do love that one. That's been a favorite. In our house recently. Some other ones that I really like, there's a new book out this year called, Fry Bread. And it's a beautiful story about, kind of like Native American culture and food. And, it's really gorgeous. There's a book, by Marcy Campbell called Adrian Simcox Does Not Have a Horse. And this is really a book about, economic diversity and how that can play out in school and relationships and friendships. It's really beautifully done. Oh my gosh, what else? I love all the Andrea Beatty, books, like, Ada Twist Scientist, and she has a new one out called Sophia Valdez Future Prez. And those are just some really great kind of like, mini activists, but also some like STEM and STEAM books, as well. Oh, let me give you two more. I'm going to pick two more out of my head. Alma and How She Got Her Name by Juana Martinez Neal is a gorgeous book about sort of, kind of like cultural processes for naming, for just like how names get passed down, essentially. And it's really beautiful. And let me think. Okay. One last one that I really enjoy is, Nico Draws a Feeling by Bob, I think it's Rexa is how you pronounce his last name. And it's just sort of about exploring, who you are and how you feel different things.
Well, that's a great list, and I look forward to adding your complete list to our show notes, so you can check that out on readingwithyourkids.com. We'll be sure to include that. So I just love this idea of being intentional and just remembering that you are your child's most important teacher, remembering you're your child's most important librarian, And also, one of the things you brought up too, just about talking about going to the library, is you let the kids, your kids pick out the books that they want to read, but you also pick out books. And I think that that's important to remember too, that, when we're reading with our kids, it's family time. It's a time to spend, but everybody should be able to choose a book. Yes.
Yeah. I think, and I know that, I know that in the mix is going to be some Fancy Nancy and some Dog Man and all of that stuff. And that's cool. I'm good with all of that. But yeah, like I said, I have books in mind that, I like to just sort of see and discover kind of what's out there as well. But sometimes I'll go to the library specifically looking for something that I've, seen online or on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, that looks like something that would be really great. Or I know I want to do a review of it on my site or whatever. And those have become some of our favorites.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, speaking of sites, where can folks connect with you and learn more about Lauren Ranalli?
So they can go to my website, which is laurenranalli.com. And I'm probably most active on Instagram, which is lauren.ranalli_author, or on Facebook, which is Lauren Ranalli Author. I have 2 new books coming out in the fall. One is called Snow Day at the Zoo, and another is called Let's Meet on the Moon. And that's that one is about long distance friendships, which I'm really excited about both of them. And yeah, I'd love to connect with people. I have a weekly newsletter that goes out with a lot of resources, and I do a lot of work and coaching with aspiring and self-published authors. So if anyone listening is thinking about putting a book out this year, you've got an idea rolling around in your head, definitely connect with me and check out my site. I'd love to chat with you.
We have had such a great time talking to the author of Places We Have Never Been, and also talking about just creating an intentional library in your home. Lauren Ranalli, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be our friend Nadine Poper. She'll be back to talk about 2 new books, Randall and Randall, and also Porky Pet and Muppet. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love for you to be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Being a guest gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. It's really easy. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. We want to thank Lauren Ranalli. Be sure to check out Places We Have Never Been. I love that Lauren said that books should be windows and mirrors. That's amazing. Also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Fatima writes these great blogs for every episode of the show. She writes a great blog with lots of additional information. You want to check it out, and you can see it at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.